Hello, ladies and gentlemen. MarauderEX here with the last of the big three E3 rundowns. So, I just watched Nintendo's first day of Treehouse. They're going to have more. I just watched the first block. Because I figure what they're going to show in the first block, they're just going to expand on in later blocks. It doesn't really seem like they're going to be going too far off the rails on things. They didn't have a direct, meaning they're not going to be talking about a lot of small things, a lot of indie things. It's just whatever they're going to be throwing in the Treehouse events. And a little disappointed by that. I like the directs. The directs have always been really popular. But also the directs were really kind of Iwata's thing. And with Iwata's passing, I can kind of see that no one wants to really just jump into that because you've got some pretty big shoes to fill. So they're sticking with the Treehouse event, which, you know, gives a lot of in-depth information. It's not as time restrictive. You don't have the stage show that Sony and Microsoft had, so you don't really have to worry about time. You can kind of do whatever you want to do, show up, take a little bit longer, ask some questions, answer some questions. They had, you know, the Pokemon, two of the members of the Pokemon production staff, and they had, I cannot pronounce his name, but the grandfather of Zelda, and they're sitting there going, they're talking, they're asking questions, they're talking about it. Granted, they're not going to give out spoilers or whatnot, but the questions were asked, and, you know, some comments were said, and it's an interesting format. I just think it's a little long for me, really. Because I was really more interested in the Zelda stuff than the Pokemon stuff, but it took a little while to get there. I was intrigued by the Pokemon stuff, but I'm not a hardcore Pokemon fan. And then watching the Zelda section, it's like watching a Let's Play, but not. And I find this really weird being a Let's Play myself, because it's very analytical. It's very, hey, this is what we can kind of do in the world, but they're not going to show us everything because that's the point. Whereas a lot of the Let's Players that I focus on, and that a lot of it's like you have a couple of different schools of thought. You've got the very entertaining Let's Players. You've got the people like Markiplier, who it's game grumps. Their personalities are what sell it. The game is more of a backdrop. Granted, there are people who watch a lot of those Let's Players that just sit there and scream like, oh my god, and it happens to me on a game that I'm not 100% familiar with. People like, you should probably do this, because the game is still an important facet. But then you've got the people who are incredibly analytical. They dissect the game, they break it down into its base mechanics, they show you how the game can be just played, how the game can be manipulated, what they see the inner workings of the game. And this is kind of a weird mishmash, because you have the people trying to be somewhat informative, but they can't tell too much. So it's like, we're trying to be informative, but very vague at the same time. So we still have to be able to have some sort of witty comment. We have to be able to keep people engaged in some way, but we're not personas. So it's a very hard mash to deal with. Not bad, I've seen worse, but not the best. I really think if Nintendo doesn't want to do the Direct series anymore, then they should probably get someone who is a personality to sit in on a lot of the Treehouse stuff. Someone who can engage the audience and the commentators as well. Because not as good of a focus on that. And like I said, the only two things they really talked about were Pokemon and Zelda. And I gotta say, Pokemon looked good. I'm not a Pokemon fan, but Sun and Moon look actually kind of interesting. They've added a couple of new things. Like I saw the Battle Royale system, which is, we're just gonna have a 4-person free-for-all on Pokemon. It's like a Pokemon melee is what's happening. So it's neat, it's different. They're still adding to the series, they're still adding mechanics, so it's going to be even more complicated than it was before. Considering I'm one of those people who knows very little, but I don't know about breeding and happiness requirements and personality traits and a bit, like, no, I don't. And now there's another facet of that. So if you were a long-time Pokemon fan, you're probably going to be really impressed with a new layer of mechanics. If you're not, you're probably going to be confused by a new layer of mechanics. And then Zelda, Breath of the Wild is the subtitle to it. Interesting subtitle. It's very Skyrim, very, your typical open world. I was expecting a little more Zelda, like a kind of a limited inventory, but this is very much you can get an axe, and it's, like, Zelda's never had an axe before. Like, I cannot think of a Zelda game that has an axe. Link has always had some sort of sword. This is new in its own way. He can also get spears, also new. So I'm just the fact that there are new weapon categories, and they showed off the axe. You can cut down a tree, and you can cut down the log and turn it into firewood, and you can get branches and knock apples down. So, like, from one tree you get like 5 different pieces of resources, which vaguely reminds me of like things like Minecraft, Terraria, those type of games. So this is something very different, very new. The game looks good. It looks really good. It has the same art style as what we've seen before. It's the kind of not cartoony cell shading that Wind Waker had, but more like Skyward Sword cell shading, very bright, colorful, not dark and ominous like Twilight Princess. So that it looks good. I was kind of already sold on it before. I kind of figured I'd be playing the Zelda game regardless. I'm I can't help but feel that this game would have been a huge system seller had it come out a little bit earlier in the Wii U lifespan. The fact that it is still a Wii U title, it's just coming out for the Wii U and an X, I really can't help but feel if they had got this game out a year earlier, the Wii U landscape would be drastically different. Maybe not drastically, but it would be different. Because this game looks like it could be just a hands-down system seller. It's not going to do that for the Wii U, it's not going to do any favors for the Wii U, and unless there are graphical improvements for the NX version, it's not really going to be a system seller for the NX either. So, I don't know. It's a hard thing to say. All in all, now that this is the last of the major conferences, and there is still going to be a lot of Nintendo content, I just can't imagine they're going to be showing a lot of new stuff. I can kind of rate all 3 of the big 3. Microsoft kind of had the strongest showing. I mean, they showed off 2 pieces of hardware and a ton of games. I feel like Microsoft showed more games than Sony, but I also have to kind of say that, and it's kind of a pro and con. Microsoft showed off the brand new Slim console and then showed a reason to not buy the Slim console. If you're gonna get Project Scorpio, there's here's a console and here's a reason not to buy it. If you haven't already bought an Xbox One, or if you have bought an Xbox One, you don't need to worry about downsizing when you could get something that's maybe the same physical size but better. So that seemed a little strange to me. Sony had a really good show. I just feel like it was kind of lacking something. They showed off a lot of games, really heavy focus on VR, and I know a lot of people are really anti-VR. They're thinking it's just the next fad, it's going to go away, and that everyone devoting time and resources into this is just kind of screwing up the market as a whole. I don't know. I can't say for sure, because I'm old enough to where I can remember CD technology being that kind of, it's just a fad, people are going to ignore it. It's like, I remember the Sega CD. I remember people thinking, no, CD-based technology, no. And yeah, so I'm not going to judge right off the bat, because I don't know how it's going to affect. And that's the thing about innovation. It's innovative if it sticks, it's a gimmick if it doesn't. And that's what a lot of people said about like the Wii motion controls. If motion controls become a regular thing, it's an innovation. If not, it's just a tired gimmick. And that's how that works. If it's something that sticks around, it's an innovation. If not, it was a gimmick that they tried. So only time will tell how the VR comes out there's a lot of the VR games that Sony showed I thought were pretty good. I really, really thought they were neat. The only one that the two VR games that really sold me are the Star Trek and Star Wars, and one was on each. So you had one at major conferences. So that's a thing. So I really think Sony had a really good showing. They showed off God of War and Resident Evil, which I still don't think, like, Resident Evil does not look like Resident Evil. It's kind of amazing. So that, and then Nintendo kind of had the weakest showing, but no one really was expecting much from Nintendo. They are coasting. They know that the Wii U is not the next thing. The NX is really just right around the corner. It's going to be out, early next year. We're probably going to get more information about it, probably this fall. There'll be press about it, and Nintendo's going to do their own thing. I really wasn't surprised to see very little from Nintendo, and this is more for the people at E3 getting a chance to get some hands-on with Zelda, but there's still no NX information. I gotta say, this is the first year I've actually been legitimately disappointed by Nintendo showings. Usually I look to them and say, oh, they're gonna have something really good. Not this time. It was things that made me sit there and think, if only this had come out a little sooner. But I guess I'll wait and see what Nintendo, has in store later in the year to showcase the NX. But as far as E3 goes, they really, I couldn't even say they phoned it in this year. So it really boils down to Microsoft and Sony. So like I said, I think Microsoft showed off a little bit more. Whether or not that little bit more was actually worthwhile material, that's depending on your interests, your take. So, and then it was really disappointing that a lot of companies didn't have any sort of other presentation. I was expecting to see, a little bit of Shenmue. I was expecting to see a little bit more of the Final Fantasy VII remake. I was hoping, some sort of indie showcase from the big three. Like, I kind of figured Nintendo would kind of jump on that bandwagon, showing off, hey, these are some games that we still have coming out for these consoles. Please don't stop buying stuff. And nothing. But Microsoft and Sony just really give little blips. Like, we got to see a couple of, things of, like, Yooka-Laylee and Bloodstained and things like that. But really not a lot. And, like, Yooka-Laylee, Bloodstained, Battle Chasers, these are 3 games that I know are at E3, but they got no screen time from anyone. So that's a little disappointing to me that none of the major players decided to showcase any of the indie games, or even just not made. Like, there were no Capcom, there were no Konami, there was no major. Like, we had some Tekken with Akuma, so a little bit from Namco Bandai, but I didn't really see a lot from a lot of the developers, which was a little disappointing, especially compared to last year when, like, everyone seemed to just come out and say, hey, we've got this great third-party company making this great game for us. Please buy it. This year, not so much. Not so much. So, yeah, that's been E3 for this year. Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Bethesda, Ubisoft, and EA. So, it feels like it was a fairly light E3. But I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to stay tuned, see if there's anything major. I might do a follow-up, and then I've got, a couple of opinion pieces that I could do, talking about, console lifespans and whatnot. So, more E3 type related stuff, but as far as the E3 show goes, this is pretty much it. So, let me know your thoughts and opinions on Nintendo's Treehouse events. How do you feel about them? I mean, like I said, I miss Iwata, because he really made the directs entertaining. He made them a spectacle, and I can understand Nintendo not wanting to do that, but it still kind of sucks to not have it direct. So, do you feel that maybe skipping out this year is, homage to Iwata, or, respect for Iwata, or is this going to be their thing? They're going to kind of move toward away from the big stage show that they've already started moving away from, or just keeping with we're going to go in depth and like 2 or 3 games rather than show off like 20 games that half of them won't come out this year. So let me know your thoughts on that. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on E3 as a whole. How did you feel? Who do you think won? Do you think that Microsoft, Nintendo, or do you think that Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, who won you over this E3? Just because I can check on anywhere on the internet and see basically people screaming that all 3 failed, or that all 3 of them individually. There are so many different opinions that each company just kind of trashed everyone else in their own way. So let me know your thoughts on that, and I will see you for more rants and more live things and Let's Plays and whatnot. So, till then, later everyone.